Matt Schauf and Jared Small of DraftSharks.com here to look at the top waiver wire options for Week 7. Jared, we've got our first 6-team bye of the season. We had some impactful Week 6 injuries that we might need to cover in our fantasy lineups this week. We'll hit on one rookie that just might be emerging with no other factors at play here. And we've got some streaming options at QB and defense. Of course, all of the players that we discussed today, plus many more, can be found in our weekly waiver wire pickups article on DraftSharks.com. We've got options there for shallow leagues, average size fantasy leagues, deep leagues, plus one player that we highlight every single week for long-term upside. Not a guy that's necessarily going to help you this week, but somebody that if you stash him, he just might pay off later in the season. We call that grab this guy. It's at the bottom of every single waiver wire article we do every week. So check it out now on DraftSharks.com. Jared, for now, though, we're going to start with guys that are a bit more help me right now because I'm in serious trouble in my backfield. And we're going to start with Craig Reynolds in Detroit.
I would describe this week in general on the waiver wire as tricky. There's just a lot of moving parts with most of these backfields, all of these backfields we're going to talk about. Craig Reynolds in Detroit. We know at this point, it sounds very likely that David Montgomery is going to miss at least one game with his rib cartilage injury. Dan Campbell, according to Tim Twentyman of the Lions official website, wouldn't even say for sure that Montgomery wasn't going to go on IR with his injury. So this could be an injury that, extends beyond 1 week. It sounds like the Lions truly don't know at this point. Now, the other moving part here is Campbell also made it sound like Jahmyr Gibbs has a good chance to return this week. So, and if that's the case, we saw back in week 3 with Montgomery out and Gibbs in, Jahmyr Gibbs got 17 carries and 2 targets. Craig Reynolds got just 4 carries and 0 targets. So for Reynolds to be usable, you're going to need to have both Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs out this week.
Now, we did have Zonovan Knight taking 3 carries in that game. He's on IR, so Devine Ozigbo seems like he probably steps into that spot from the practice squad, but maybe we get Craig Reynolds with 7 carries. Maybe we get less work for Jahmyr Gibbs coming off a multi-week hamstring injury. So I agree. You don't want to treat Craig Reynolds this week like I'm definitely starting him if you're picking him up off of waivers. But if you treat him like, okay, I need an option and maybe Craig Reynolds has a shot to be helpful for me, that's the level at which you should be considering him on waivers this week. And frankly, even if Jahmyr Gibbs is also out, Craig Reynolds is no lock to give you production. So just make sure that you don't overpay for what you're actually getting. Let's also throw in that Detroit is at Baltimore in week 7, which has not been a good rushing matchup, no matter what Derrick Henry's final numbers from last week might suggest to you. It is a better spot against Las Vegas in week 8. So that's an enviable position for Lions running backs, and we'll see exactly where they're at. I'm sure part of their calculation on David Montgomery is that they then have a week 9 bye. So if there's a shot that David Montgomery could really use that 4 weeks to recover, it would be good to go ahead and put him on IR now so that they can have the next 2 weeks of an extra roster spot to play with. And we'll have to watch and see what happens on that front.
Reynolds is also possibly more of just like a long-term stash than a week 7 option, because you do have Montgomery already hurt. You have Gibbs coming off a hamstring, which we know those, have a tendency to linger, pop back up again. Yeah, I'm with you. It's not a good spot for the Lions offense this week. They have a 19.25 point implied total in Baltimore, which I believe is easily their lowest of the season.
So I agree that Craig Reynolds is somebody maybe you hang on to, not somebody you need to hang on to, but if you got a spot to play with, somebody to stash. Jordan Mason is, I think, contending with Craig Reynolds to be the most interesting running back on waivers this week. Of course, the question for him is twofold. First, we don't know yet if Christian McCaffrey is going to miss any more time. And second, we don't know what Elijah Mitchell's role looks like in his second game back from a knee injury.
Yeah, exactly. Another tricky situation. And hopefully we get an update on McCaffrey, before your Tuesday night waiver run ends, because Kyle Shanahan wouldn't say much about him when asked on Monday. He said McCaffrey was still undergoing tests. They're not sure if it's just an oblique or if it's an oblique plus the rib injury. And Shanahan made it seem like if it is a rib injury, that would make it tougher for McCaffrey to play on Monday night. That is a Monday night game against Minnesota, which, adds even another, layer of complexity to this whole situation. Because if McCaffrey ends up as, a game time decision. The other thing here, as you said, is, Elijah Mitchell and his role in this backfield. I'm going to read the quote from Kyle Shanahan on this backfield, because I think it's you could kind of read it a few different ways. So he said, Elijah Mitchell has earned a ton with us over these years. I think Elijah, when he's healthy, has been as good of a back as there is. He's just had a hard time staying healthy. Hopefully Christian McCaffrey will be good to go this week, but if not, we've got a group of backs that we can rely on. I read that as Mason and Elijah Mitchell are going to be involved. Maybe it's something close to a 50-50 split even. So I wouldn't be too excited about Mason if McCaffrey ends up out this weekend or Monday night. But, he would definitely be someone who could start for you, especially with 6 teams on bye this week.
I agree. It's always a bad idea to assume too much. I think what we should assume, to a mild degree, is that Elijah Mitchell is the favorite here to fill in for Christian McCaffrey. Last week was his first game back from a 2-week knee injury, and it was a very wet game. So if anything, you're going to be extra cautious with a guy coming off a knee issue in that game, especially if the next guy behind him, Jordan Mason, is somebody that you're fine with. It's not a huge drop off from Elijah Mitchell. But I think that once everybody's healthy, everybody not named Christian McCaffrey is healthy, I think we should assume Elijah Mitchell gets more work than Jordan Mason. All that said, Jordan Mason's probably the most interesting stash to me this week if you don't need a week 7 option, because 49ers running back is a highly productive position. You basically have to be really bad to not produce in that position. So if you can just stash Mason, knowing the injury history for Elijah Mitchell, knowing that Christian McCaffrey is now dealing with some injury, I mean, that's somebody that could pay off for you at some point if you can afford to just carry Jordan Mason.
Yeah, Mason has averaged 5.9 yards per carry over the past 2 seasons. 64 carries, not a huge sample, but also one that I think is meaningful enough to tell us that he can be productive in this offense.
They're at Minnesota this week, then versus Cincinnati. Then they have a week 9 bye. So we'll see if that ends up factoring into when Christian McCaffrey plays or doesn't. The next one up on our list is Latavius Murray, whose situation got a little bit better with Damian Harris's neck injury on Sunday night. It sounds like that's not major, thank goodness. After he left on a stretcher, it was deemed a neck sprain. Got to figure that Damian Harris misses at least this week against New England. So, Jared, that makes Latavius Murray, to me, probably as interesting a pickup as Craig Reynolds for anybody who needs an option this week. Not that Latavius Murray is going to get a bunch of work, but he's in about as good a spot as you can be in terms of the quality of the offense just to steal a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, as things stand right now, and again, we're just kind of guessing on Jahmyr Gibbs' status, but I would rather grab Murray than Craig Reynolds as a week 7 play. Because again, I am leaning towards Gibbs being back, and if that's the case, I think Murray is a significantly better option than Craig Reynolds this week. Murray already, last week, season high 12 carries and a season high 49% snap rate. If you just look at Latavius Murray plus Damian Harris this season, combining their usage, 9 carries per game, 1.7 targets per game. I think most importantly, 2.2 carries inside the 10-yard line per game, 1.3 carries inside the 5-yard line per game. Murray and Harris had kind of been splitting that, goal line work. I think Murray's going to get most of it now, or, at least for as long as Damian Harris is out.
And the Bills should be a lot better than New England. Of course, they should have been a lot better than the Giants on Sunday night as well. So it should be a good spot for running back opportunities. Speaking of opportunities, it looks like Kyren Williams is going to miss the coming week. Ronnie Rivers is out for probably even longer with a PCL sprain. So the Rams backfield probably features 1 or 2 guys that most folks don't even know about. What are we doing with this Rams backfield for week 7?
And Kyren Williams, Adam Schefter said, quote, "It's not considered a long-term injury." But the fact that he's already basically ruled out by Sean McVay on Monday tells me it's not totally insignificant. Maybe he does miss even more than 1 game. So we'll keep an eye on that. That's just kind of my read based on McVay already saying he's probably not going to play this weekend. So yeah, Rams are down to Royce Freeman and Zach Evans in their backfield this week. And Royce Freeman's been around. He's 27 years old. This is his 6th NFL season. Career 3.7 yards per carry average for Royce Freeman, 2.9 yards per carry on 97 carries over the last 2 seasons. So to me, all Freeman has going for him is he's a veteran. He's been in the NFL. Maybe that means something to Sean McVay, and he gets in the mix. I think Zach Evans is definitely the more exciting pickup here. He'd be my bet to lead the Rams in carries this week. But I don't think you're going to get anything close to the Kyren Williams workload. I just expect the Rams to go super pass heavy this week, which they had been doing anyways. And I think, with these backfield injuries, it's only going to push them more in that direction.
Yeah, I think it's important to make a few things clear. One, Kyren Williams is not a special talent. That's why he was a day 3 pick. That's why he didn't really do anything until the start of this season. Didn't test great heading into the league. That said, he has been dominating Rams backfield usage this season, which is why we have enjoyed him in fantasy, not because he's a dynamic performer, but because he's been getting all of the touches. So that tells you a lot about the guys behind him in that Rams backfield. If they won't give any of Kyren Williams's work to anybody else, despite, letting Cam Akers go basically for nothing. So start out expecting nothing from these guys. And then from there, whatever you get from Zach Evans or Royce Freeman is gravy. I would also bet that Zach Evans is the higher upside player here. We also know that NFL coaches like players that they can trust. And that's especially true at running back, where it doesn't really matter a whole lot most of the time, the variations in talent. If you get somebody that you can trust with the ball, or, pass blocking for your quarterback can be at least as helpful to the offense as if you just put the more talented guy in. So if I'm getting either of these guys off of waivers this week, it would be Zach Evans, because he does have more per touch upside. He has also let people down since he got to college, so I wouldn't expect big things from him. And then we'll see what signals we get on who's going to work. Just don't figure that somebody has to get the production in the Rams backfield, because somebody doesn't. They could get nothing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just looking at these guys for this week, I would put, and again, as things stand now, we'll see about the Detroit backfield, and we'll see about the 49ers backfield. I would put Latavius Murray and Zach Evans kind of like 1A, 1B is your best bets for this week. I think Murray's a safer bet for touches. I think, Evans has the upside to, easily lead his backfield in touches, which Latavius Murray obviously doesn't.
Michael Mayer getting out of the backfield is not in a changing situation like other of these guys. He's just somebody who's gotten more usage, and especially this past week. So the rookie had 1 catch through 4 games, 2 catches, and then 5 the past 2 games. So Jared, are we overreacting to his first good week of the season by considering him a waiver pickup for week 7?
No, I don't think so, because we saw the playing time change as well. Mayer had not ran more routes than Austin Hooper in a game prior to last week. And then last week, it wasn't even close. Mayer was up to a 67% route rate. Again, easily a season high 6 targets, season high 5 catches. And then, this isn't some nobody. This is a rookie that a lot of people were excited about, got 2nd round draft cap, was uber productive at Notre Dame. And there's obviously room in this Vegas passing game for Mayer to kind of become at least the clear number 3 option, right? I mean, you have Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers is off to a really good season, has been seeing strong volume, but I think Mayer is the favorite the rest of the way to be number 3 on the Raiders in targets. Now it's the Raiders, and there's quarterback issues with Jimmy Garoppolo hurt again, so that kind of takes some of the shine off Mayer. But I mean, with how weak tight end is, unless you have one of those top 5 or 6 guys, I think Mayer is definitely worth adding off waiver wires this week.
Mayer is a strong prospect, somebody definitely worth betting on still long-term. Not only was he productive at Notre Dame, he was like a featured piece of their offense there. He was a featured receiver for them. He was drafted a spot after Sam Laporta this year. Here are his route rates by week so far. 28% in week 1, 38.5%, 37%, 30.6%, 44.4%, then 67% in this last one. So it has been trending up. Last week remains an outlier versus everything else. So make sure to keep that in mind when you're deciding just how much to like Michael Mayer this week. That 1 week dip to 30.6% was also in the last Aiden O'Connell start. So there's a chance that this week we see a lot more blocking from Michael Mayer if we do have the rookie quarterback starting. That said, I agree that Michael Mayer is worth grabbing going forward. If you're in rough shape at tight end and looking for a rest of season option, there's definitely a chance that within the next 2 to 3 weeks, Michael Mayer becomes somebody that you can start, not as a top 6, but somebody where you're like, I hope that he gives me tight end 10 to 12 numbers weekly going forward. And then obviously you're going to steal a touchdown here or there.
Yeah, definitely possibly works in that range. I'm with you. I would not want to start him this week. I'd kind of want to see at least last week's usage, repeat at least one more time before trusting him. But I think it's gonna, I don't think it's something that's gonna, dip back down. They're gonna, go back to Austin Hooper as their lead pass catching tight end.
Joe Burrow and others are on bye. Justin Fields just got hurt, Jared. Lots of people probably need to stream quarterbacks this week. Who do you like as a streaming QB for week 7?
I'd start with Brock Purdy. Like if you're worried about him coming off the ugly game in Cleveland, I wouldn't be worried. We'll obviously see about McCaffrey and we'll see about Deebo Samuel. If both those guys are out, Purdy would take a hit. But even without those 2, I think Purdy would probably be the best streaming option this week. He gets the Vikings on Monday night. Don't have to worry about weather in that one. It's in Minnesota. The 49ers have a 25.25 point implied total. So, the odds makers obviously aren't worried about this Niners offense going forward.
Then among guys who are more widely available on waivers, I think Baker Mayfield, Derek Carr are not really separated by a whole lot in terms of streaming options. They're both more of the won't kill you than the will help you option. But, that might very well be what you're looking for this week. I would lean toward Baker because he gets a pass funnel Atlanta defense that ranks 29th in pass DVOA DVOA so far. And like I said, he's been solid. He's got Chris Godwin and Mike Evans on his side. His team is implied for 0.75 fewer points than the Saints are. But, the matchup is tougher for Derek Carr, gets a Jaguars D that's 8th in overall DVOA, 10th against the pass. So, like I said at first, not a whole lot separating these two, but I would lean Baker Mayfield over Derek Carr if you're choosing.
Yep, I'm with you there. Sam Howell, does he still qualify? I think he's still available in over half of leagues on Sleeper. I mean, he just keeps pumping out top 13 fantasy weeks, 5 of 6 now, and gets the Giants. The Giants D has been better lately. I mean, we all saw it in primetime against Buffalo. Even before that, I mean, they picked off Tua a couple times in the Dolphins game. They didn't allow Geno Smith to do much in that game 3 weeks ago. But I think it's still a good matchup for Sam Howell. And again, he just keeps scoring fantasy points.
Yeah, I think Brock Purdy and Sam Howell are guys that should just be rostered as, weekly platoon options in most leagues. You can sort by the week 7 projections or by our adjusted fantasy points allowed in the free agent finder to see exactly who is the best option available in your league. And there are many other sorting options as well. Of course, the free agent finder syncs directly with your league. You can update rosters to see exactly who is available to you, compare players by projections for this week or the rest of the season, highlight your best options, save yourself really hours of waiver wire combing every week. The more teams you have, the more time you're saving by using the free agent finder. So become a DS Insider, take full advantage of that tool. Jared, let's wrap this up with a streaming defense. We mentioned last week Cleveland, and that's just a different one than any other option because the Browns are not simply a weekly option. That's a defense that you should hold the rest of the way if they're available or if you have them currently, and you can start them just about every week going forward, especially after they had a good performance against San Francisco in week 6. What else do you like among streaming defenses?
Yeah, it looks a little better than we thought it was going to last week, to me at least. I think Seattle and Tampa Bay are your 2 safest options just because they're quality or at least, decent defenses. Seattle, home for Arizona, good matchup. Tampa Bay, as you said, home for Atlanta, pretty solid matchup. You got to hope that the Bucs force Desmond Ridder to throw it enough. That's what you need out of the Bucs defense. Getting a little grosser, I think. Vegas against Tyson Bagent. I know it's not a good defense, but it's Tyson Bagent. There's upside there. And then, man, this Commanders Giants game, you don't trust either defense, but these offenses are 32nd and 31st in adjusted fantasy points allowed to defenses. So, there's upside to both those Ds, even if they're not good.
Yeah, and if I'm choosing there, give me the Washington defense against Tyrod Taylor as opposed to the Giants against Washington, which is eminently sackable, but can also score points. So there's some downside risk there. I'll also throw out the Rams at home against Kenny Pickett because it's Kenny Pickett. You can check our week 7 rankings or your free agent finder to see more options on defense or any other position that you need to pick up this week. And of course, like I said, become a DS Insider to take full advantage of all the content and tools that are ready and waiting to help you win your season.